Welcome to this quick tips for effective questioning tutorial. My name is Phil Sempervivo, and I am the creator of the Quick Tips series concept. Each video in this series presents important tips that can help you to become a more effective communicator. In this video, we present tips that focus on the subject of questioning. Knowing how to ask effective questions is a skill set that sits at the crossroads of interpersonal communication. It comes into play when we are interviewing, listening, teaching, consulting, and basically whenever we engage in human dialogue. The successful business leader will be a skilled questioner. Okay, let's get started helping you to become a more effective questioner. If you want to become an effective questioner, then there are some simple facts about the purpose of questioning that you need to remember. First, remember that the purpose of questioning is to objectively obtain the other person's opinion. A corollary to that, the purpose of questioning is not to broadcast your own biased point of view. If you want to see these simple facts consistently ignored, just watch the way the news anchors question their guests every day. In contrast, the good questioner always stays objective and always seeks the truth. There are many words like those shown on this slide that tend to portray an image that is not, strictly speaking, objective. Rather, these words immediately trigger an image that is either overly positive or overly negative, and therefore they interfere with having an objective discussion. We refer to these kinds of words as being emotionally charged, or sometimes simply as being charged words. In this slide, we see that Chet has used a charged word in his question of David. Now, if you had to bet on David's response to Chet's question, would it be, "He surely seems to exercise good judgment when he is under the gun like this"? Or is it more likely going to be, "I'm very disappointed with his decision"? Bingo! So, here is my first quick tip on how to become a more effective questioner. Simply avoid using emotionally charged words in your questions. A leading question is one that tries to encourage the other person to give a preferred response. We sometimes refer to it as the "don't you think" question, since that is the form it most typically takes. The question here is really saying, "Don't you think, like those of us who really know, that?" And when you use this kind of a question, it is very prejudicial. There is a more subtle form of leading question, which you see in the example number 3 above, which first states the preferred answer as a certainty, then pretends to ask an objective question. It is like saying, "Look, we already know the real facts. What do you think about them?" This is also a popular technique used to bias. And behold, this leads us to our second quick tip on how to become a better questioner. Avoid using questions that are leading questions. Let's shift gears now and focus more on the positive side of what you can do to ask effective questions. Questions that will get to the heart of how the other person really views the situation we're asking about. The effective question will do one or more of the following. It will keep the discussion on track, allow the other person freedom of expression, prompt the other person to give complete answers, periodically validate what you think you heard, and finally, permit you to question while staying neutral. Let me give you some tips on how to do these things. Let's consider quick tip number 3, namely to use questions that give clear direction. As an example, we might ask, "How do you feel about the new employee compensation model?" After all, this is not supposed to be a game of guess the topic. Get to the point and do so quickly. Let's look ahead now to quick tip number 4. Ask questions that are open-ended. An open-ended question is one that cannot be answered simply yes or no. And people's opinions are typically more complex than black or white, yes or no. We need questions that will delve beneath the surface. Here is an example. What do you see as the pros and cons of this employee compensation model? It will take some thought and some words to appropriately answer this kind of question. When we ask a question but feel that the answer is not complete enough, we frequently use a technique called rephrasing or paraphrasing. And so our quick tip number 5 is rephrase the answer as a question to get a more complete answer when that is required. Now here's an example. When the other person has answered a question we have on staffing, they reply, "This new method of staffing is the best thing that ever happened to the company." Now a good questioner would follow that up by saying and asking specifically, how do you think the new staffing method will help the company? Which now brings us to quick tip number 6, our final quick tip of the day. Encourage the other person to continue talking through techniques that keep you neutral. Here are 3 techniques that enable you to do that. First, you may just simply give a neutral comment of encouragement, such as, "That's interesting." Also, a neutral comment that indicates your understanding, such as, "I understand." And finally, we have silence. Of the 3 techniques listed on the slide, the most difficult one to handle is silence. You see, silence is a way of saying, "I'm waiting for you to tell me more." Because everyone finds prolonged silence to be a bit uncomfortable, it can sometimes be like a Mexican standoff as to who will break the silence first. But don't worry, the experienced questioner usually wins, and the person being questioned provides more information. There are a lot of other points that could be made about how to improve your effectiveness as a questioner, but the points that were presented in this tutorial are, in my experiences, some of the really big ones. If you can begin to incorporate them into your discussions with others, they will quickly make you a more effective questioner. But as with most learned things, you need to practice them until they begin to feel quite natural. Questioning is truly a skill that is only achieved through practice. So practice, practice, and then practice some more. Well, good luck with practicing your questioning skills. And I hope that you will take the time to listen to other tutorials in my Quick Tips series as I release them. Thank you for your attention.